So welcome to Personality and its Transformations. So I guess the first thing I'll do is offer you a bit of a description of what personality is. It's a very extensive phenomena. Your personality determines the way you perceive. So what that means, at least in part, is that your personality actually determines how you're going to extract facts from the world. You know, people think that you see the world, and then you think about it, and then maybe you react emotionally, and then you act, but that's really not accurate. It's too slow, first of all. And there's lots of times when you have to be fast. And if you had to go through all that processing before you acted, you'd be dead. So personality is deeper than what you do with facts. It's deep enough so that it determines how you bias your perceptions so that the world appears to you in a particular manner. And we don't really understand how personality does that yet. It determines your emotional response to things. People differ in their positive emotions, their baseline level of positive emotion, and their variability, and they differ in their negative emotions as well. So some people are set to be anxious and some people are set to be fearless, and the environment can move that around to some degree, but a fair bit of at least its origin point seems to be pretty tightly determined by genetic factors. People differ in the degree to which they're creative. They differ in the degree to which they're orderly. There's all sorts of different phenomena that are tightly attached to what makes you different from other people, because that's another way of thinking about personality. Personality colors your actions, because you act in accordance with your personality. It determines your values, and so that also determines how you act, because of course you act in accordance with what you value, because you're moving from where you are, which isn't as good as it could be, to somewhere better, and you have to decide for yourself, or maybe that's decided for you by your temperament, just where better is. And so it's very interesting and exciting for me to teach personality, because it's the most personal of all phenomena, and its understanding is extraordinarily relevant, I think, to everyone. Understanding your personality can help you figure out who you are, for better or for worse, because with every set of personality attributes, there tend to come an associated set of vices. So for example, if you're an orderly person, which in many cases is a good thing, then you're also prone to harsh judgments. You tend to be xenophobic, and sexual behaviors that aren't strictly normative are likely to disgust you. And you might think of that as something that you conclude as a consequence of your experience, but it looks in many ways like it's determined before you act in some ways. Personality theory can also help you understand other people, because it's easy to think that other people are like you, and they are like you. They're like you enough so that more or less you can communicate with them. But they're also very different from you. And so often when you're communicating with people, they're actually starting with a different set of a priori presumptions than you are. And we like to think that things can be worked out as a consequence of logical negotiation, and that's true to some degree. But these a priori factors that underlie your being itself interfere with the ability to use logic, because logic is usually predicated on values, and values in turn are predicated on your temperament. So having an appreciation for differences in personality can help you understand your own personality and maybe improve it, and also understand and give some credence to the viewpoints of other people. One of the things we've been studying in my lab, for example, is the relationship between personality and political belief. You know, and it's been thought for a long time, it's kind of an Enlightenment idea that You come to your political beliefs as a consequence, again, of rational deliberation. You take a look at the facts, you analyze them, and you extract out what you think are the appropriate, what is the appropriate information from that analysis. But we've found, for example, that people who are high in creativity, openness, which is the technical term really for the trait that's associated with creativity, people who are high in openness and low in conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is basically industriousness and orderliness. High in openness, low in conscientiousness, they tend to be liberal or left-leaning. Whereas people who are more conscientious and less creative tend to be conservative. And that seems to be true more or less cross-culturally, at least in those cultures where the left-right spectrum is similar in nature to the left-right spectrum in North American culture. People tend to think of personality as something that's relatively fixed and stable, because if it was fluctuating completely all over the potential range of personality, there wouldn't be a lot of utility in discussing it. But it is stable, so that you are who you are, but it's also amenable to change. Now, it's difficult to change your personality. It's as if, in some sense, that the dice was rolled, or 5 sets of dice, as it turns out, were rolled at the point where you were born, and you were granted a particular kind of personality configuration on the off chance that that configuration could find its proper niche in the environment. It's sort of like people have more or less settled on a 5-dimensional personality model, which we'll talk about a lot in the last half of the course. But the idea seems to be that perhaps is that the environment that you inhabit, which is largely social, right? It's not just physical, it's mostly social, because you're like hyper-social primates. Some of you are probably checking your email right now. It's as if there are niches within that space that may or may not be there, may or may not predominate. And the dice rolls, when you're conceived and you're given a set of attributes, and with any luck you can find a niche in the broader social and physical environment where your particular set of attributes is going to be functional for you. And so a lot of, and this is something to think about too, we'll try to get into this in some depth in the class, a lot of what you need to do to make your life at least tolerable is to figure out what your personality attributes are, and then to find a niche where they're valued.